We are learning new information into the investigation into Trump's attempted assassination.
You said there were 8 shell casings on the roof, so 8 bullets were fired.
Hi there. I'm Eric Hunley, and this is the 5th video of my Trump assassination attempt coverage.
Former President Donald Trump is preparing to hold a rally right here in the Susquehanna Valley tomorrow.
If you would like to see the full series, you can click on the link above. For this video, I decided I needed to visit the Butler Farm Show site where Donald Trump was shot personally. These are the red barns in question?
Yes, so this rooftop and that rooftop should be where...
Marking the first time he's back in Pennsylvania since the attack on his life. Thousands are expected to be at the Farm Show complex in Harrisburg tomorrow night.
This is something that I learned from covering the JFK assassination on another channel I have, America's Untold Stories.
Sir? You're the president? I work in that building. Were you in the building at the time?
I've had the opportunity to visit and really explore Dealey Plaza twice. It is shocking how small the location truly is when you see it in person. I coordinated this trip to the Butler Farm site with my friend George the cameraman, Lynn Westover, the former Marine sniper who was in my 2nd and 4th video.
It's important to know what you're looking at and that we're looking and talking on the same thing, because from that high up, you could have a lot of things that look the same.
As well as Mike McCormick, who was in my 3rd video and a witness to the event.
When I left, I didn't know that the fire chief had been shot and killed,
right,
or that there were 2 others in the stands to my right. I had no idea. Yes, sir.
Mike brought his son Nathan, also a witness, so we could get the perspective of a 14-year-old young man and how it affected him. I also had my drone with me, so we could get different footage at different angles. This trip turned into quite an adventure with some real surprises, including meeting and having the opportunity to interview Slippery Rock Mayor JonDavid Longo, who was not only at the event, but also spoke and introduced Donald Trump.
I typically feel pretty good talking in front of a crowd. When I took that stage, that was one of the few times in my life that I was truly at a loss for words.
To start off our adventure, George and I agreed to meet Lynn at what George has dubbed the local cultural center, Sheets. From Sheets, George and I headed to the main entrance of the Butler Farm Show, while Lynn headed to check out AGR. Within a minute, we got a phone call from Lynn that he was met by security as soon as he entered the parking lot and was chased off. George and I continued to the main entrance of the Butler Farm Show and found it locked. So, we all went back to the local cultural center, Sheets, to regroup, and decided to try the Butler Farm Airport and headed there. We were able to successfully enter the airport and could see into the Butler Farm Show right through the fence. I'm looking at the famous water tower.
Right.
We determined that, at worst, if we couldn't get on the grounds, we could fly my drone from the airport. Lynn went ahead and left his vehicle and jumped in with George and myself, and we headed back to the local cultural center, Sheets. On the way back to Sheets, we saw a possible back entrance to Butler Farm Show. We decided to give that a try. We drove into the back entrance, and there was a booth that was unattended, so we continued in and drove all the way to the actual area where Trump was shot. I was uncertain about security and the rest, so I took my handheld camera and wireless microphones for Lynn and myself and started to record. All right, I'm joined by Lynn Westover here, sniper extraordinaire, walking into Butler. What is this place? Butler Farm Show.
Right, and it's like 2 parts. So because you also have the airport, which is a part of all that. So it's kind of like a multi-purpose facility.
Now we're walking. These are the red barns in question.
Yeah. So this rooftop and that rooftop should be where the counter sniper teams were at. And what's really nice about this, Eric, what you're going to see, because as we talked about before, when you're looking overhead at a map, even with as great as satellite imagery can be and Google Earth and all that stuff, it just doesn't do it justice until you actually have boots on the ground. So even with like some of those cameras that we're seeing, the video, the live video that was happening at the time of the rally, they're elevated, they're super high def, and it makes things look one way, and then you get on the ground and you actually see how small or how tall or how short things actually are.
Okay, so now, just so I get some clarity here, I'm going to start off straight ahead. I'm looking at the famous water tower.
Right.
And that's the building in question, correct?
Yep.
Now, everybody can see that we've got a fence line here, and I don't know any congressmen or have any local contacts whatsoever, so we have to play within the rules. We have found that AGR is completely closed off. It appears with private security. So the shooter was where on this building? Was he on this side here by the tree?
Yeah, so you see those 4 stacks. If you look at the video that was just released from the forgive me, I forget his name, and they caught the movement of the head of the shooter going across the.
Yeah, it looked like you sprinted across
so
to get into position.
So there is just enough of a, when you look at that ridge, there's just enough dead space. That's what we would call it, is dead space or defilade, to where all you could see was like his head, and then he had to move up to the ridge, and so where he was at. If you're looking at this tree right here,
right, that's what I wanted to get perspective of.
Just to the left of our tree.
Snipers were up here, correct?
Yes, and so that's the other thing. So now when you look at this, because that video where you can see the snipers, it's kind of a little bit elevated, so it made these look taller than they really are. So from this vantage point here, if I'm having to contend with these trees, I'm using something called the burning technique, and I can explain that a little bit later, but with my naked eye or with optics, I'm trying to manipulate positive, negative, and dead space to try to see deep. Depth perception is like one of the biggest things for any type of scout sniper or a designated marksman or whatever to have to contend with. Don't let the moniker of sniper fool you, whether it's a military sniper and especially a law enforcement sniper. Because for me, in the military, like, yes, could I take very long-range shots? I could, but the majority of the time, part of the reason why I would get employed as a sniper for, like, my recon team or an infantry element or ground combat element is because I'm getting a very short window to have a target facing me, and in a lot of cases, I'm only getting a little bit. And so having that level of precision. And when you look at what they didn't have a full facing target.
Right, that's what I wanted to point out is I'm going to stand at the corner here as if I was the sniper on the roof. Obviously, I'm not. It's not an exact science, but there's a tree right freaking in front of me.
Yeah.
Now, one question though, Lynn, and you can, maybe shed some light to this. I have a video and it showed that there were police that were like wandering around the fields back here trying to get on. Now, would that have alerted the sniper, or are they so focused on what's going on in their frame that they might not have noticed these police kind of down there?
I think the biggest thing to try to understand here is, especially, so you probably have different levels and different layers of comm.
Sure.
So I don't know how many different layers they had to go to get whatever descriptions that they're getting to try to, because you're trying to talk them onto a target, right? It's no different than like when you're doing like a 9-line brief for talking on a call for air support to a pilot. I have to do a talk on, because if that dude's sitting at Angels 30, so say he's at 30,000 feet moving in, he's giving me, hey, this is my IP inbound, this is where I'm at, because it's important to know what you're looking at and that we're looking and talking on the same thing, because from that high up, you could have a lot of things that look the same. And I know we're not, this is very different. We're only talking probably 20, 30 feet off the ground. But still, when you have a lot of things going on, there's a lot to look at. And as I said before, it's like looking at life through a coffee stirrer straw. So, it's real easy if I'm standing over here and I have a different perspective over here. I'm like, how the hell can you not see him? And then on top of that, like, why don't they take the shot? Well, hey, I have to have hostile act, hostile intent, and I have to have positive identification. And so that's what they're trying to achieve. And, the number one thing in the world that you will see with any type of law enforcement, military, special operations, the biggest friction point that they always have is comms. You could have multi-million-dollar communication suites and sets and stuff like that, but if I can't effectively do that Bob Ross verbally to you and paint that picture for you while you're in radio defilade, that's what we call it, man, it's so difficult. So for me, that's why I made a lot of the comments and had a lot of the, essentially the feelings and the moods that I had about it. On one hand, certainly the public scrutiny is important, and it is important that we find out what the heck happened. But to sit there and
cameras and drones and many other things in place to watch for that, something broke down. That shooter with that rifle should have never been that close to the former president of the United States at a venue like this.
Monday morning quarterback somebody when you don't even know anything about the job, number one, and just all the different friction points that are going on there. And two, in a lot of these cases, so you'll have your advanced team, they come in, do the site survey, then you're going to have initial coordination, you're going to have final coordination, and you're going to be figuring out all these comms, and you have a comm plan and a protection plan and everything else involved. Bear in mind, too, that if some of these, we call them OSAs, outside agencies that are here local, that are participating in the overall security structure and the security plan of what's going on here, this may be like me and you, like, hey, I'm Eric. Hi, I'm Lynn. I'm with such and such sheriff's department. This is now the first time we've effectively worked together. And so now we have to build a level of rapport and capability to then communicate and work together. So it is a lot of moving parts. And we that's the biggest thing, is we take for granted for that. And that's a lot of times where that change blindness and adaptation comes in. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, hey, I'm going to be complacent today. It's slow, subtle change over time. Bad guys take advantage of that. They take advantage of seams and gaps in your operational space. And so when somebody asks the questions like, well, how in the hell does a 20-year-old kid, yada, 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 this, that, and the other? Well, I don't know. It's probably the same way that the Sarnaev brothers were able to build, construct, and then place an IED at the Boston Marathon. It's probably the exact same way that you can have Joe Dirt, the insurgent, right, literally build and construct an IED piece by piece right in front of the main gate of a firm base or a FOB, and totally defeat the training, the equipment, and the experience level that even special operations people have. Because if you have a determined attacker, if somebody really wants to get to you, they'll figure out a way to get to you. It's just a matter of how determined they are. So even just in the distance, we moved a distance of maybe 50 yards here from where we were standing over there to where we're standing right now here. Both between the perspective change, the angle in which we're looking at that building where Crooks was, and our elevation, it totally makes it look like a different viewpoint. I would be willing to bet that when he came and did his site survey and he reconnoitered where he was going to go, well, let me use tactical cunning in the way that I would do it. I would have multiple vantage points. And even when you see in terrorist acts and things like that, they will have primary, alternate, secondary, tertiary. We call it a PACE plan, primary, alternate, contingent, and emergent. Because things change on the ground. And even now, like just seeing even the distance of me moving from here to here could change everything. So again, when we're seeing all those different views and we're like, same question over and over again, like, how could they not see them? You're not looking through the same lenses that they are. You're not looking from the same angle or elevation that they are. So, and now you got thousands of people around you too. I'm looking for a bad guy and a sea of good guys. And, the other thing too, you see some of that other footage of him like actually just casually walking over to the building. That's an example of change blindness. Like bad guys, when they are running from cops, right? As soon as they think that they've gotten into defilade or dead space, they will stop running and they'll just start walking. Because when cops are flooding into the area, what am I looking for? I'm looking for the dude that's running. I'm looking for the dude that's speeding. I'm looking for the dude that's breaking rubber. I'm not looking for the guy that's just like, ho-hum, just going for a stroll.
As I was filming with Lynn using my handheld camera, we noticed other people on the site. They were using a drone as well as cameras, and they sounded like broadcasters.
Okay.
Hey, let me count you down so that it's synced with the drone.
I introduced myself to them and a gentleman with him who was wearing a suit. I learned that his name is Mayor Longo and that he was also a witness to the Trump assassination attempt.
Right, and I think that many of us, and especially those of us, who are veterans, who deployed or saw combat scenario, got a little complacent. You go to a place like that, you go to a rally like that, you expect that there is going to be a level of safety and security that is unmatched. So, I heard the first round. Again, I recognized it, but I thought there can't be. It's just no way. I just found out my wife was pregnant a few weeks ago.
Oh, congrats.
So, my attention went from President Trump to my wife right away. Push her on the ground. I'm over top of her. I'm trying to cover her head and her chest and her abdomen, her vitals, as much as I can. I'm not a giant man, but I'm trying my best. And I'm scanning behind me, trying to find out and understand exactly where these shots are coming from, because at first my fear was, is there a shooter inside with us? Then I come to understand, of course, that they're coming from outside the perimeter of the venue. But it's weird to say this, me personally, perhaps I might be a little bit more well-equipped to handle the stress of that situation because of my past experiences. But, when I was in Afghanistan, I never had somebody that I loved, like my mother or my wife with me. Not that I didn't love my brothers.
No.
Right. But I mean to say, when it's different when your mother or your wife or your little sister.
You all signed up to do something.
Yeah, of course. Right. They didn't. So I'll tell you, I'll fast forward to that night when I'm, talking on the phone with my sister on and off all night into the wee hours of the morning. She's inconsolable. She said something that really upset me. And she said, this must be what you felt like in Afghanistan. We have that in common now. And she's 10 years younger than me. I never in a million years thought that I would have that conversation with somebody at home, because I think I speak for many of us when you join the combat arms, the Marine Corps infantry like I did, your hope is that you go and endure those hard times and the sights and the smells and the sounds in the hope that it never comes here to our shore and that it finds your family. And it found my family.
I had to leave to meet my other witnesses and asked if I could interview him afterward. He agreed. So George and I went to meet Mike McCormick and his son Nathan at the local cultural center, Sheets. When we returned to the Butler Farm Show, George mic'd up Mike and Nate and was setting up his equipment to record. As soon as we were ready to go, a security guard came riding up on a four-wheeler and kicked us all out of the Butler Farm Show. So Lynn, George, and I made a beeline to the airport, and I got my drone out as soon as I was there so we could get some footage. We knew that time was of the essence, so we put it up in the air ASAP. You could see how the airport is literally connected to the Butler Farm Show with a road that is gated off here. One of the first things I wanted to explore was the water tower. There has been much speculation about it and the possibility of another shooter there, as well as it being overlooked as a good lookout point. I wanted to get some perspective of the scene from it. This is the view from the water tower, with the AGR building where Crooks shot, and the stage location left and moving into center, now covered by tents. You can get a feel of how large the top of the tower is and can use the ladder for scale. It definitely could provide an unobstructed view of the AGR leaf. After only a few minutes of recording drone footage, we had another 4x4 pull up to us, and once again, we were kicked off the property, this time at the airport. So we all jumped into our separate vehicles, headed over to the local cultural center, Sheets, where we met up with Mayor Longo. Okay, we are here with Mayor Longo, who was kind enough to invite us to his town because the folks at Butler Farm Show determined that They did not want anyone on the property, so we were asked to leave, and Mayor Longo was there that day, and I wanted to interview him anyway. Tried to interview him on site, but unfortunately didn't work out, but it's quite fortuitous. We're here with a grand flag right over there, one of the biggest you will ever see.
So this was brought together by our community, private business entities and individuals, patriotic American men and women, helped come together to make this a reality. It was something that we came up with in the middle of the COVID shutdowns when the world was dark and dreary. I went to a couple friends of mine and I said, what can we do to just lift this community up? So we ended up with a 150-foot pole. It's all American steel. It hosts a 40 by 80 foot American flag, and the site that we're on right now is a hill that's about 1,400 feet above sea level. So that makes this flag one of the largest and highest flying flags in the country, specifically in a 135 mile radius. It's the largest, if my calculations are correct.
Now you represent, I would say, rural Pennsylvania. I mean, you literally were speaking right before
Yes, sir.
President Trump, and you've introduced Trump before in the past, I believe, 2020?
Yeah, on October 31st, 2020, Halloween night. The president came. That was one of his biggest rallies he ever had, by the way. They estimate upwards of 60,000 attendees were in that moment. And let me say this too, I typically feel pretty good talking in front of a crowd. When I took that stage, that was one of the few times in my life that I was truly at a loss for words. It was just a sea of people as far as you could see. And it was incredible. When I heard that the roar after I was introduced, and mine wasn't nearly as long and loud as the president's,
Sure.
but it kind of made me lose my breath for a second. I thought, wow, this man gets this kind of support daily, and it was something. So yes, I had the honor to do that then, and I was honored to be able to give some comments and more importantly, lead the rally and the Pledge of Allegiance for a second time here in Butler County.
Fantastic. Now, unfortunately, things took a it is a tragic turn.
Yeah.
Because we are talking about a murderer.
Dozens of fire trucks formed a procession through Freeport, Pennsylvania to honor 50-year-old Corey Comparator, the retired firefighter and father who died shielding his family from gunfire at Saturday's rally.
Trump survived, but some people overlooked the fact that, one person lost his life tragically, and two others very recently just barely released from the hospital. They were both critical. So a very tragic day. How was that for you? You were literally sitting on the stage and you could have been a target.
Yeah, I didn't really consider that I could have been a target. I thought for sure, we could have been collateral damage. I understand that the president was certainly the priority in that scenario. This guy came to take out Donald J. Trump. But when I thought back on it, being a speaker, being an elected official, seated with other elected officials, 2 members of Congress, multiple state legislators, a sheriff, the list goes on and on. We were all seated together nearest the stage. If somebody wanted to, they could have wiped out a good portion of Western Pennsylvania's Republican leadership in one fell swoop. It would have taken a number of seconds. Those 8 shots went where they did, but any one of them could have found us. And so again, relieved, grateful to have made it through that. More happy, of course, that my wife and my family, who was right with me, that they are safe and sound too. But I do want to take it back, of course, to Corey Comparator, who, as you mentioned, a lot of people seem to forget or maybe just put on the back burner. He did not get to come home that night. His loved ones are without him now, and it was because he came there to hear a message of hope and inspiration from President Trump. That was stolen from him. He was stolen from his family, and all of us were robbed of what would have been otherwise a joyous day and an elated time in our lives.
Wow. Now, how is your family doing after all this? I mean, this is obviously, a tragic near miss, and I will be speaking with a boy who's 14. These are concerns. If your family was there, how was that?
Sure. They've all been champions, so strong, and so I have to give them credit, especially my wife. She's just been so strong and supportive in this moment. I was worried about her for some time, and asking her repeatedly, how are you doing? Are you okay? would you like to talk about this? Do you need someone to talk about this? But she, she went through the shock phase to then the guilt phase of getting to walk away from that scenario, knowing full well that somebody right behind us, Corey, was shot and killed, and that 2 others just barely made it out alive out of that situation. And I think that after that, she consolidated those feelings into something that was an inspiration or motivation for her. And this is true for every one of my members of the family who are with me, to lean in and push forward and get beyond that, so that we could look ahead to our future. I mean, I have a child coming on the way. It's my first, with my missus. My sister is a young lady. She's 10 years younger than me. She has a whole life ahead of her. I think that we're all resolved to see this thing through to completion. We were already giant fans of President Trump. This has only galvanized us and made us ever more motivated to help move the needle in the right direction, to get him back in the White House. And now with a fellow Marine, Senator J.D. Vance, I couldn't feel more proud at the prospect of seeing a Trump-Vance ticket there. And we're all resolved to that. So I think that's how my family really has been able to move past it. That, and President Trump inspired us, of course, that day when he showed us just how strong he is and how courageous he is when he stood up, amidst all of the chaos after having taken a bullet to the ear, and showed us just who he was in that moment, which was a strong and courageous leader, somebody that America needs right now.
But when the president stood up, raised his fist like that, you could feel it. Yeah, where it calmed everyone down.
He calmed us for sure.
I 100%.
Yeah, and more than that, he inspired us. I truly think he inspired us to cool heads and again, being steadfast in that moment, not being quick to action, and making sure that we were helping one another, because that was remarkable. You probably remember this. I saw all manner of people across that field stepping up in that situation, helping one another, making sure that their neighbors were okay.
After admiring the mayor's flag and discussing that day with Mayor Longo, I interviewed Mike McCormick and his son, Nate.
I'm Nathan.
I'm Mike McCormick, and this is my son, Nathan. We're here today to explain what we witnessed and what we experienced that terrible day, July 13th, nearly 3 weeks ago. Yeah. And I wanted to bring my son along and, give him the opportunity to explain what he saw. I thought it would be a unique, different, perspective, 14-year-old that witnessed history.
So, Nate. Yes?
Have you ever been to another event?
No, I haven't been to another event like this. This was my first time, but it's not how I expected said first time to go. No one really goes to one of these just to expect that to happen. I feel surprised, a little bit annoyed, because the Secret Service kind of had a job to do there, protect President Trump, and somehow they didn't. People knew that there was a guy on the roof, but no one did anything. They just let it go in a way.
How have your friends reacted to this? How have you felt since time has come on?
Since it happened, I haven't really talked about it much. I mean, I haven't talked about my friends that much either, minus the day it happened. But other than that, they were wondering if I was okay, wondering if President Trump was okay. But other than that, nothing really. Like I said, I don't think I really talked about it too much. My mother was horrified. She did not like it at all. She was really scared, really worried about us. Yeah, that's probably why she won't let me go again.
I think you and I had discussed this before. It was horrible trying to get any sort of cell signal in that crowd. I guess if you have, I don't even know the amount of people that were there, but if there's 30,000 people there, trying to use your phones at the same time to tell somebody what they had just witnessed, it was near impossible to get a signal, to get any message out. Text messages wouldn't go. trying to get a phone call out wouldn't work. We were probably 10 miles away from the site before we were able to get anything to work on our phones. So, but so far as his mother goes, that was rough. The phone conversation, I understand where the emotions came from, but certainly none of us ever expected anything like that to happen. Because I told you before that this was the third event that I had tickets to, and only the first time I had gone, because I wanted to take him so he could experience it, but I didn't want him to walk into something and see people protesting or people saying something to him. So I just didn't take him, and I figured this time, you know, he was old enough, he could hear somebody say something, negative or whatever, and be okay with it. Certainly didn't expect what we, ended up witnessing. That's for sure.
I would say we did talk to each other a little bit. Like, a little bit's a bit of an understatement, though. We have talked about it. Him more, by a long shot. But other than that, I wouldn't say we talked about, like, too much about, like, Secret Service, the police, the sheriff, but more of, like, how we were there, how we're always on the news, and kind of stuff like that. But other than that, I don't think we've talked about it too much.
We haven't really discussed it at length at all, other than checking in repeatedly, trying to give him time to process it on his own, and then ask questions about how he's, processing it.
I'd say I'm processing it okay. I mean, I think I'm, as he would say, old enough to understand it, but I'm not too sure on why. It is kind of weird to think about it, but it's never fun to think about it, especially when you're there, because that one small thing could have changed that day and made it way different. And I think everyone is glad that it didn't happen like that. But I also feel horrible for the chief, the fire department chief, and his family. I feel horrible that they had to experience that, and no one should have to. Sometimes I was a little worried that it could have been me, but I wouldn't say too often I was worried about it. But yeah, there were a couple of times where I was a little worried about it.
Is this an event like that for you? Do you say that there was life before this happened and now there's life after that happened?
I would say yes, that there was life before, there was life after, but it's still not a good thing in a way, if that makes sense. But no one likes this, no one wants it to happen, but I don't think there's really another good way to say it. No one likes this. The only people some people will do this, they think it's okay in a way. They think that they're doing something right in their own views, but they're not. It's trying to kill someone, which is never a good thing. And I'd say a good 90% of the time, they end up getting caught.
I always like to ask.
Or worse.
What's the one question that I should have asked, but I did not? Or as a variant, if nothing comes to mind, what is the question that you've been waiting for somebody to ask?
How do you feel?
How do you feel?
Horrified, honestly. I'm kind of horrified that this happened. I'm horrified that I was this close to seeing someone get assassinated. But other than that, I'm just surprised, shocked.
I think it's important to mention again that when we were there that day, when we left, we had no idea that anyone else had been hit other than the president. When he stood up, the gap amongst the Secret Service was right in front of us. So he and I could, look directly at him, and we could see the blood coming down his face. And we truly had no idea that anyone else had been hit. So I don't want someone to see that and misunderstand how he's, you know.
Oh, no. Where did you find out, and how did?
I found out someone was injured, I think, when we got home and he turned on the news. But other than that, I don't think I knew anyone had died until like maybe a couple days after.
And did that have another impact on you?
I'd say a little bit of an impact because, like I said before, it could have been me, could have been anyone, could have been someone I know. But other than that, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it like was too big of an impact, but it still makes you feel bad. Because you know that someone's family member, like could have been someone's like wife or husband, someone's fiance that died that day. And you don't want that to happen to anyone. You don't like hope anyone has that happen.
I'm sure you're extremely proud of your son.
It should be.
Having seen the amount of trauma that I've seen, and it routinely happens. You were a cop. I'll see other cops in class all of a sudden reach back and something hits them. So just as a kind of a piece of, I don't know, advice or just something to think about for you as you continue down. Number one, don't feel like that you should have to feel worse than what you feel right now. Trauma is subjective. Different people respond to it in different ways. And so however you're feeling, let it wash over you, experience it, but let it go. And whether it's your father or whoever, somebody who you trust implicitly, like just be cognizant of how you're feeling. Things could bubble up years later, or whatever. Something could happen and you are reminded of it. That's what PTSI is, post-traumatic stress injury. It's an injury. It's not nothing wrong with you, right? That's your brain pulling on something, and it's a survival mechanism. So that, okay, I saw this almost happened. I don't want it to happen again, type of deal. So the only reason I even bring that up to you is just want you to know, like as an individual, if the way you feel changes tomorrow or 3 weeks from now or whenever, it's okay. And with what he's been through, you can trust him. Talk to him about it. Don't be afraid to do that, because when things become a problem is when you bottle it up. You try to, the machismo of, oh, I'm good.
What you said though is something that I knew a lady in New York when I was in law enforcement, and she was a critical incident stress manager, and she likened the things that you go through as you have an event, you put it in a file, you put it in a file cabinet, and you shut the door. Next one happens, you open it up, put it in another file, and close it up. At some point in your life, you're going to have to deal with those files. And it happened for me. It's what you said is 100% true. And I check in with
your dad process it?
I don't think I am. I think he understands it enough where I don't need to. I mean, if so, he hasn't asked me for help or anything.
I think
He may not be asking you, but I have a feeling you are. I have a feeling you are, believe it or not. And I could be wrong. We're not recording. Oh, he might be.
It's definitely a shared experience that, I've been careful how I bring it up. I do ask very frequently, how he's doing. But today was the first conversation we had in depth about it, so
on your way here, you might have been talking about it.
Yeah. But I wanted him to have his own thoughts too. Like when you started the interview with me, you were like, "Nah, don't tell it now," because you like going at it from fresh standpoint. And that's what I was trying to do with him too. I wanted him to tell his story, but I didn't want to influence it all. And that is the same thing I do with him with politics, religion, anything. I want him to make his own opinions.
Do you like Trump?
Yeah.
How about your school? I mean, I'm curious. Most kids there like him or not?
I wouldn't say I talked to the kids at my school about politics, so I wouldn't really know. I think I've mentioned it like once, maybe. I think a couple of them do, but not sure. So I'm not sure about my teachers. I would never mention politics with them.
Have they mentioned?
Well, no, but they mentioned it to you.
No.
No?
I wouldn't say so.
I'm encouraged.
Also keep in mind though, he goes to a private school. So.
Oh, well, okay.
What is he laughing at?
Sorry, fly on the wall. It's just the way it, His reaction, I was like, no. Oh, no.